Okay, so here's insight into what the gut zoomer panel looks like. This is an abridged version, so it's not going to show the 300 different bacterial species that we're testing, but do know that this is a more comprehensive stool panel, whereas other panels out there look at around 30 to 60 different bacterial strains. So starting off with this particular panel, up in the top left, you'll see gut diversity. That allows us to see the overall richness and diversity of the microbiome. So if that's incredibly low, we know we need to work on overall food diversity and perhaps even some resistant starch intake. Underneath the phyla, you'll see different families here. This person's looking pretty good, but we could, with other people see, if their proteobacteria is incredibly high, that's something for us to be of concern, and that can drive things like E. coli or other gram-negative bacteria. And so it's just a way for us to see, out of the diversity that there is in the microbiome, what is it that is the most rich? And then underneath the gut commensals, you see these green, yellow, and red bars. Now, this is not diagnostic, but it does let us see trending patterns based on the bacterial balance within the gut microbiome. So it gives us some indicators of where we might want to look more deeply, but again, it's not diagnostic. Underneath gut pathogens, you can see this is where we look for parasites. So this particular person does have a parasite. So that was one of the first things that we addressed. And then going down, you see we have the inflammation panel. Again, this lets us see what's going on from an inflammatory perspective within the gut. Really helpful. It also gives us some indicator whether or not there may be some mold driving the inflammation. So I really like this panel. This person looks pretty darn good. And really their biggest issues were coming from overall digestive sufficiency. So we can see here how adequately are you able to synthesize enzymes for breaking down the food that you're eating so that you can get those nutrients or the nutrients from the food. So pancreatic elastase is an indicator of your pancreatic enzymes. You'll see this person is not making adequate quantities. And in fact, I like to see it far greater than 200. So right there, we know that their enzyme production is inadequate. And you can also see that they have meat, vegetable, fiber, both present in the stool, so they're not breaking down the food. And they also have fat present in the stool as well. So we would do a lot of work here, working on enzyme production, stress management, speed of eating. We'd also want to look at the pH of the stomach. It's really likely that they have a or a more basic stomach environment. So we'd want to work on hydrochloric acid production. This is a really good indicator that a lot of her bloating was actually coming from her inability to break down the food that she was eating. So that was a big point for us to dive into. And then coming down, you'll see we have bile acid metabolites. Hers look good. And then short chain fatty acids. So these are really helpful for colon health, particularly the butyrate, which you can see is deficient. And even her overall total short chain fatty acids are deficient. And again, this is really the preferred fuel source of the colon. So we want to drive this up. Knowing that it's low, we can go ahead and take proactive action using resistant starch or maybe even some butyrate-rich foods or butyrate supplementation. But this is great because low butyrate is a precursor to colon cancer and more advanced GI diseases. And then you see going down, we have other markers. I really like the SIG-A marker, which is secretory IgA. This person's is actually a bit lower than I would really encourage, but that's an indicator of your overall immune resilience. So I've been actually getting quite a few people coming in underneath 300, and that's an indicator that they've just been in that hypervigilant state for far too long, and now their immunity is just, it's really suffering. And so they're more vulnerable to more advanced diseases or infections just because their immune system is not on its A game. And you'll see there the pH that I was talking about. So hers is 7.8. And so that's a really basic stomach environment. We want to make sure that's much more acidic, like 6.2. And that will really be the driver of pancreatic enzyme production. So we know that we can start there too. And then the zonulin and the antigliadin are indicators of gluten exposure and reactivity. I really like to pair this panel with the wheat zoomer because sometimes here it can show up as normal or in range, but on a wheat zoomer, we can actually see that there is more antibodies being created in response to overall wheat, the overall wheat plant or other aspects of gluten. So this is kind of an indicator, but it's not always the most accurate. So yeah, this is the inside of the gut zoomer. If you have any questions, go ahead and reach out and I'll be happy to answer any questions.